Oh, buddy.
Anyway,
Elden Ring Nightreign is a weird one. It takes the foundation of one of the best open world RPGs of a generation and turns it into not just a roguelite where death is even more of a big deal,
I didn't even like play RuneScape, so it's like I'm not gonna get
but a three-person co-op
references to
focused
everything. It's
roguelite.
just
I had the-
And in many ways,
I had the
that
board
strange experimental
when I was a kid.
concoction is a success. Under the right
There's like a-
conditions,
like the physical
Nightreign's
shit, like the
45-ish
figures.
minute runs are positively thrilling. They are packed with surprising encounters,
Somebody gifted me a whole like fucking giant
challenging
RuneScape
decisions,
set, and then
satisfying
I
opportunities
don't.
for
When did
teamwork,
Warhammer start?
and some of the
Were there
best
sets back
boss
then?
battles from software
I
has
got
ever
one.
come up
Yes, time ago.
and that's a very high bar. The big
Sucks.
problem, however, is that those right conditions are far more
I'm fucking
difficult to
stupid
create
though.
than they
I
should
didn't know a bunch of
be.
shit. I told you I got a bunch of Yu-Gi-Oh cards too. Like I had like 6,000 cards because my neighbor got in trouble in school, so he had to give me his GameCube, his cards, Pokemon cards, all that shit. That shit is in. I have no fucking idea where I could be selling so much shit for so much money. If I kept anything from my childhood,
the rest of his life.
bro. That's how I felt. I told you when I went to sell my PC, I went to this gaming pawn shop. They were selling Pokemon Conquest in that bitch physically for $105.
And are anything less than
That's
a
it?
hardcore Elden Ring
Exactly.
player that
That's all I'm like,
actively
damn, I
seeks
had
out
all
ways
these
to make that already
games.
difficult game even more challenging. Nightreign isn't for you.
Thought that shit would be
Yes,
like
there's
300.
technically a single-player option,
They had
but it's
N64
so
games in
poorly
that bitch,
balanced
too.
that I would be
That shit was-
honestly shocked
They had a
if
bunch
it
of
isn't
old shit
patched
that
and
was cool.
adjusted within the first month of release. And this is
Nightreign.
coming from someone who lives and breathes
I heard the
these
bosses
types
are
of
peak.
games. To understand why, we first need to go over what Nightreign
But
even
that's like
is.
bare minimum,
On a
I
very
feel
basic
like.
level, this
If the
is a
bosses weren't
roguelike
good, I'd
that
have a
takes place
problem.
on an island called
Acid?
Limbo,
W
which is
acid
kind of
flip.
like a melting
do
pot of
acid?
Elden Ring's environments,
No.
enemies, bosses,
Drug,
and
drug,
structures.
druggy.
The general flow of a run is split up into a 3-day cycle.
No.
On days 1 and 2, it's all about
Look at
farming
it
gear,
along the-
beating bosses,
respond to that,
and leveling
buddy.
up
I
so that
won't
you're
do
as
any
prepared as
drugs.
possible when you face
I'm
off
like
against
you.
one of the 8
Huh.
extremely difficult
Huh.
Nightreign bosses on day
Thanks,
3.
great.
It's a great formula, and while you
I
might
just
think that
said
the
it's a
mostly
fucking
static map
asset
would get
flip
old
game.
after a while, there's a
All
good
the
amount of
fucking
procedural
bosses have already
generation
been
on
in the
every run
games.
that mixes up
Oh,
the location
they're
of
rehashed
just about every
bosses?
point of interest,
A lot of
requiring
them
you to
are.
plan
Oh,
out
buddy.
a unique route on each
Thing.
new attempt. On top of that, there
I
are
haven't
also
watched anybody
random
play
events
it.
like boss raids, summoning portals, and other wild occurrences that inject
I
a
heard that the
heavy
runs
level
just
of
don't
chaos
change
every
much
once in a
from
while.
game to game,
Efficiency
and that
is
just
key
sounds
because you
very
are on a
stupid
very
for.
strict time limit, with a battle
this
royale
type
as the
of game.
circle that constricts at set points throughout the
bird
day,
dude looks fun.
eventually shrinking to the size of a small battlefield and setting the stage for a boss
It is a
battle that
bird.
ends the
Worm
night.
face.
It is immediately
I'm the
obvious
biggest
that
bird.
Nightreign was
I'm the
designed with a
biggest
three-player
bird.
squad in mind. Enemy encampments that don't require you to fight a single boss will instead have you spread out to take down 3
I'm
tough
stuffing it.
enemies. Basic encounters against 5 or more enemies that would be trivial with 3 players become costly time wasters when you're on your own. And the new Nightlord bosses all
Basically
seem
complaining
explicitly
about
designed with having
single
allies in
player
mind.
sucking.
And I'm not sure how I would even
No,
approach several of
man.
them by myself. Nightreign at least scales up your damage when you're alone,
That
but
a
it
lot
doesn't
of
change
people,
any of
like
these
Finn,
fundamental
he'll
design
never
decisions
fucking
in
summon
any way
people
that
in
would make
Souls
solo
likes.
play more reasonable.
Yeah, that's not him. That's me though.
But the biggest issue is
Fucking
that co-op
challenge.
partners are able to revive each other when someone goes down, but you've only got 1 life to live against bosses when
I'm
you're
saying
out
chat
on your
really
own.
changed me up.
That's generally the case in
Afin
roguelites,
says, huh?
Used to
but
be an easy
usually there's
gamer.
some sort of safety net that you can fall
No, I'm
back
a normal
on.
gamer.
For example, Hades
Huh.
has Death Defiances.
We're
and
talking about
part of
summoning
the
bosses
progression of
or
that
summoning
game allows you to
help
work
in
towards
like
unlocking
Souls
more of
likes.
them with
That's not a
every
you
run.
thing. That's a me
Returnal has
thing.
artifacts that you can find that give you extra lives, rewarding you for being more thorough in your exploration.
Oh yeah, but
Spelunky
you was
has
fucking with that game,
shortcuts that
haven't
allow
you?
you to skip the early stages to get
Returnal.
practice on the enemies, traps, and bosses
Returnal.
that you only have limited
I
experience
haven't played
with.
it.
The list
Oh.
goes on, but Nightreign has virtually nothing
you not
to
talked
make
about
up
that
for
game?
the fact that solo players lose
That's what I always
access to
wanted to
that
play it.
crucial
Oh,
revival
okay,
option.
never mind.
There is an item that will resurrect
the
you once
sparkle,
with half of your
sparkle,
life,
glitter
but it's
sword.
limited to the highest rarity tier, meaning
Hey,
you have to choose it
that'd be
over a
Monster
legendary
Hunter.
weapon
Monster.
if one does appear as a
I
reward.
literally just double
Similarly,
shot with wings,
you may
bro.
find them in a shop, but they cost a substantial amount of
That
runes
mouth
that you could
opens.
instead use to level
Wait,
up.
what?
Either
I'm
way,
amazed
it's
the
just
fucking
not a
double Joe
solution
doesn't
that
have a
makes up
move
for
like
the
that.
crippling detriment of not having
Cook
someone to
up.
revive you if you go down. None of this is
No
to say
way.
that solo
Dude.
play is outright impossible.
I was
and
like, he's
I
not
have
in
had a
WoW,
few
is he?
successful runs on my own.
No,
Just that
thank
the
God.
balancing of solo play feels like a job half finished. And as a result, the frustration of playing alone wasn't worth the triumph for me to have any desire to play it more without a squad.
It's the frustration playing alone. Maybe not want to play anymore.
Doesn't Are there any
Nightreign's
ambush
saving
monsters
grace
in
is that
Wilds?
when you do have a squad of 3 people who all know what they're doing, communicate well,
no Rajang,
and are
there's
generally
no
pretty skilled at
Valstrax,
Elden
there's
Ring,
no
it really is.
Devil's
They haven't added
Rajang.
Rajang yet? Has that just been
an entire game's
bubble?
worth of progression
No, there's already
and condensing
2,
it into a 40-minute
like,
run
monkey
is a strong one.
monsters.
Going from cutting down rats with a
returning
basic weapon
already.
to culling
Scientist.
Elden Ring's most fearsome bosses with a
Pangalala
badass
and,
armament that you may or may not have
Longanga.
gotten to use in the main game is one of the coolest and most satisfying parts.
I'm sure you fought.
It's 80 plus hours of
you
character
got to
growth
like
condensed
Longanga,
into less
right?
than an hour and shot
The ice
straight into
monkey?
your veins.
If I saw,
Dropping into a run the first couple of
I
times
remember.
is certainly overwhelming,
One-ass
mostly
fucking little
because of the
kids.
amount of information on the minimap you have to process.
I don't think so.
But at least
I
FromSoft
think
keeps the inventory and
I was
stat
on fuck
management
shit.
very simple. Level ups are
I was
automatic,
grinding a
letting
little
you
bit, so
press
I
a
didn't
button
actually
outside
get
Grace to
super
automatically
crazy far. I
level
did
your
not play for a while.
class's preferred stats.
word.
And as far as weapon stats go,
It's
all you have to
funny
worry
that a lot
about
of
here is the
the
damage
ape
number,
monsters,
the elemental affinity,
like,
the passive
have
bonus you
little
get
kids
simply for
around
having the
and
weapon in your inventory,
Rajang
and the
just
weapon
men
skill
go
that
their
comes
own way,
along with
fuck you
it.
up
This
alone.
meant when I had a choice between 3 rewards, I was
I'm
able
sticking
to
my
very
babies
quickly
on
make a
you.
judgment on
What's
what I
the point of
needed
having
at that
kids?
moment
I'm
and
supposed to
continue
raise
on
my
way.
own little
Eventually, I
soldiers.
started to understand what rewards were offered at which camps,
Well, little
which
fart
ones were quick
soldiers.
and could be cleared
No.
before the circle closed
But
in,
now the
which
bird
ones
cooking.
I should do only if I had a
Kong
lot of
Lala.
extra time, what level I should attempt
Shit
certain
on you.
roaming bosses,
Damn!
and which bosses I should absolutely avoid unless my team was really confident in our builds. Exploring
Finn, I'm
these
surprised
areas
you haven't played
can
this
be
yet.
more frustrating than it needs to be, thanks to
Lunging
your wall
attack.
climbing ability that just feels straight up bad.
Oh, you
Especially
do.
when it takes 3 attempts to jump over what looks like should be an easily scalable wall as you're trying to escape from the encroaching circle. But learning the ins and outs of the map
Watching bro
helped my
try to climb up
efficiency
that
and
shit
led to a
gave
very
me an
satisfying
immediate
feeling of skill
flashbang of the
progression
Cuphead
that wasn't
tutorial.
tied to the actual progression
Bro
system
trying
that
to do
offers
that.
persistent improvements between attempts. That system is tied to relics that can be won after completing a run. Whether you win or lose, you still get relics. But the better you
Afin
perform,
says I
the
played
better
it
the
today.
quality and quantity
You played
of relics
today?
you
Oh,
earn.
how'd it go?
These can be equipped before a
And
run
look, I don't know if
and
you're still
include
here,
stat
but I'm gonna be
bonuses,
playing
starting
Yakuza
skills
0.
or elemental affinities for your
I think that's
initial weapon,
supposed to
buffs
get,
for performing certain actions,
ordered
and in
day
some
1.
cases, they can even improve the skills of a specific class.
For,
When
Switch?
you're just starting out, these bonuses are hardly noticeable and too
You gonna do
random
the
to really
karaoke.
make any sort of
If I
compelling
make it that
build
far.
from. But eventually, with enough
You
runs
will.
under your belt, you'll
I hope
get some
so.
powerful relics that can really start to have an effect on your
Liquid
power
Liquid
level.
Moon
in the run.
underscore TK
Like,
says you
There
will
should
probably
You'll probably
drop
drop it, yeah, I imagine.
Choice with
But
regards to the
I'd rather
random
give
progression.
games opportunities
Or at
to not
least
play
a
them.
way to control some of the
Liquid's
randomness.
cooking everyone
There
today.
are a small selection
He's
of
right.
relics that you can buy at the jar shop
Quentin
inside
Gabe,
your
that's-
list before
that's
runs,
Brett Brandon.
and there
I
are
know,
set
I know
relic
he's right.
rewards for being
cook
Night
your
Lord
ass.
bosses and completing
Oh, buddy,
class-specific
get off the
objectives called
stage.
remembrances. But
Any
other than
fucking
that,
way.
you're completely at the mercy of the RNG gods
They're
when it
just
comes to
stroking that
what
shit.
relics you get. It can be
Oh,
really annoying when
brother.
you're looking to
A
strengthen
little
your
hot to
preferred
it on
class, and you
Yep,
keep getting
yep,
relics that
yep.
just don't do anything.
Yeah, you did.
Your butthole, damn it.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you can't hear it, so I'd
One
say
of the
it.
biggest departures
Ha.
compared to what we're used to from Elden Ring is
You
that
can't
the
hear the
classes
sound
are
alert,
now
bitch.
actual
Ha.
classes with unique skills and gameplay styles, as opposed to soft classes. That
I
just
did not
determine
know
your
the
starting
Switch
stats
comes
and
out
weapons. And the 8 options are very
in like
defined.
exactly
Even
like
the
damn near
most
2
basic
days.
archetypes having some interesting twists
I
to
didn't.
them.
I
Wilder,
thought it
for
was.
instance,
I thought I
is
was
the
gonna pick that shit up
general
during the day.
trades,
I didn't
but
think.
also has
They
access to a
said
nifty
pick
grappling
that shit up
hook
at
that can be used to
Thursday,
pull weak
June
enemies
5th,
towards you, zip yourself towards larger
12:01
enemies,
Eastern
or
Standard
simply
Time.
zooming
AM.
around the field at high speeds if you aim it on the ground.
midnight lunch.
Hey,
In addition
I'm
to
there.
basic fighter, mage,
Alright.
and ranger archetypes, you also have a few completely
Attend
unique
your
choices
late night
that
store
don't fit
opening
into any
events. How about I
pre-existing mold.
fucking
One of
don't?
the most interesting classes
shift
is
on
the
Thursday
Executive, whose
is
main
3
skill
to
has
1.
you pulling out a unique sword
Oh,
with a
buddy.
Sekiro-like parrying mechanic tied to it. Basically, by blocking attacks with proper timing, you completely negate damage,
I sent him the
don't lose
green
any
bean clip.
stamina, and reduce the enemy's own stamina, potentially opening them up for a
Confirm
critical
your
hit.
order status
It's a
and
very
things.
risky class, especially in a game where missing a parry can mean almost certain death, and it feels like the offensive power of the Sekiro sword is a little too weak to
Not
justify
every
the
store
risk
has
of
a late night
parries,
opening.
But I appreciate this inclusion nonetheless as both a nod to Sekiro and a completely different way to approach combat. As mentioned, each of the classes has a remembrance tied to them, which is essentially a collection of journal entries that chronicle the story of how they
You come
wound
to
up
the
in
state, you
Windbell
might get.
and their purpose for being there. It's a far cry from the rich lore that we're used to in FromSoft games, but at least each of the remembrances has a handful of playable chapters that have you completing specific objectives in order to earn powerful relics, as well as a healthy amount of runes to help you level up during the actual game itself.
Oh, buddy.
Almost all of Nightreign is made up of existing Elden Ring parts, but there are a few surprise bosses that are pulled from the Dark Souls series as well. But the 8 Night Lords are brand new, and oh boy, they're almost all unlike
that's how old heads be, bud. They can't just say girl fine. He said, you lucky. Back in my day. No girl like you.
Stopped or interrupted
I just drop your fucking panties and eat you out.
Others are designed to party up in the hold aggro or press the assault.
Some extra shit. You can describe fucking sexual assault. Describe rape, old ass nigga.
Only one of them
if I was 30 years younger, I'd bend you over.
Simply being hanging back and pelting them with arrows for what felt like an hour. Still, 7 out of 8 is still pretty great, especially when those 7 are among the best software.
The old thing is talking from the back.
Excellent accompanying soundtracks to match. I don't want to spoil them too much, but the fight against the Fisher and the Fog boss in particular is so good.
In fact, let me pause this shit real quick. Say whatever your grandmother didn't give me none, you know, I'm gonna take it.
But the creativity of those bosses once again shines a light on the Eldritch Elden.
You what?
They only really work as a team. By far, the 2 biggest issues facing Nightreign right now are 1, the shocking lack of
all people are different, bro.
Like 2, the absence of a duo.
Born to regeneration.
If you play as a duo, you will be forced to fill the 3rd player with matchmaking. It is simply a lot to ask of a group of 3 people who all must have purchased the $40 game, play on the same platform, be of a similarly matched skill.
I was thinking that maybe you could share play. Y'all haven't owned the game is kind of crazy.
Challenge of the day 3 bosses have the time to devote 45 minutes per run, and also can agree on fighting the same boss that they may or may not need to beat for their own individual progression. There is a decent pinging system that at least makes it possible for light communication with a group of randos, but there's no built-in voice chat, which makes nuance.
Yeah, no voice chat is fucking absurd.
Hit the basement of the castle instead of the front or side entrance virtually impossible. It's just a night and day difference when you're able to group up with a squad that communicates well and knows what they're doing versus when you've got one that doesn't listen to you or just constantly makes bad decisions, especially with no way to vote to cancel or quit out of a run without penalty. That makes the
you can't leave runs either. Yeah, that's dog shit.
Unappealing. When Elden Ring Nightreign is played exactly as it was designed to be played, it's one of the finest examples of a 3-player co-op game around. The 8 character classes
when do you think I should show up
to use and feature a
for that
amount of
Switch 2 thing?
Despite their limited movesets, the new Night Lord boss battles are among the best FromSoft has ever crafted and make the most of the 3-player dynamic and the fast-paced racing and clock nature of each run leads to exciting moments.
I was thinking I was gonna just sit outside because they said they would deliver it to my car, but that was like during the day. They said, nah, I'm not doing that shit.
Matchmaking and built-in communication tools.
When you arrive, find a dedicated line for customers.
Have this kind of experience unless you're bringing 2 real-life friends on every run. And if you want to just play by yourself, I can't recommend it because of the poor solo mode balancing. All of this amounts to an ambitious spin-off that's exhilarating when you're able to create the proper conditions, and one that quickly flips to incredibly frustrating when you're
Fantasy Light better.
Executive